Hello and welcome back to the channel again for a Superman video. Um, I tried to say the last one would be the very last one, but this one is coming because there are just claims made that I want to try to address and deal with. Um, there's a lot of I don't know what to call it, but pretended hype. There's this. I don't even know if I believe these people that I hear, because I was listening to one podcast or a portion of a podcast that had to do with news that James Gunn was out because, and you've probably seen this news. You can check that out for yourself. That he's out with the sale of Warner Brothers. Once it's sold, that he's gone, and that some other people taking over. DeLuca and Abdi. Uh, not gonna try to look up any of this stuff, so you go ahead and do it. Cosmic Book News, if I'm not mistaken. So go check that out and see what it says, and then you can search all the podcasts to find out who I might be talking about. But the person that I'm talking about was very praising of an individual that took over a particular series, and then that series has since gone downhill greatly. And now that podcaster is saying, he shouldn't be doing it this way. And he was trying to defend Gunn and saying that, say, we're going to tone down the Gunnisms if this new regime comes in. They're going to give him a chance to keep on going. It's all speculation, so I'm going to leave it at that kind of thing. So that was the discussion. But I mean, you should just see the talking about it and the politicalness of it all. The politics being the way this person is viewing, this podcaster and stuff, who are out in California, by the way. So, there are certain segments of the country, which is the vast minority, in fact, and I say it truly, the vast minority of the country have that political flavor, if you will. Okay? So, but not to get into a whole lot of politics, but the question keeps coming up, or the statement keeps being made. And I saw the article while looking some of these things up, and I talked to Grok for a while. And that was a very interesting conversation. I'm going to bring that up in just a second. Um, but yeah, I'm bringing that up in just a second. But certain things were um, discussed uh, with the AIs. Um, I'm going to show you in just a second, and it's good. It's almost like having a conversation with just another individual person, and trying to get them to see their mistakes and the flaws and stuff like that, and correct what they're doing and stuff. I'll explain in just a moment. But it is really interesting to have this conversation. So that's a lot of what I'm going to go through today, because the article that I saw was the illustrative of many that have come out saying James Gunn's Superman, or Superman 2025, has done this and it's done that. It is broken records. It's the highest grossing superhero film this year, or but especially it's outgrossed Man of Steel. It has surpassed Man of Steel in the gross box office. That'll be a headline, and that'll be most of the wording that's given to it. In fact, I'm looking at um, a Google search, and one of the things that AI is bringing up is Superman versus Man of Steel box office battle. Okay. Um. Yeah. It. It's. We're gonna get into this in a second. It. There's not one. I should say there's not one unless they want to have one. In fact, it was all the James Gunn advocates and the Superman 2025 advocates that were saying it's going to make over $1 billion. It's going to make more than Man of Steel. It is going to blow Man of Steel out of the water. Well, when you read the article that says it's got the highest gross box office, in the paragraph it does use the word domestically. You can hear it you can hear these things when you read stuff. You can read a tone, as it were, the way it's being presented, and the tone of it was to diminish the word domestically, make it look as small as possible while you're reading it, so that you don't really notice that they're saying it's the domestic box office where it has surpassed Man of Steel as far as unadjusted box office. And it's just the way that is called spin. That is doing spin. And you do that all you want to. But to do it and then act like you haven't is ridiculous, To do it and to then, if somebody calls you out on it, to say, oh, no, 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 and reject the idea that you have um, twisted the numbers a bit, then I have a problem with that kind of a person that says that sort of thing. Okay. Now, on the same token, there are people that are coming out to say the Forbes article that came out saying that Superman has lost money for the studio, about 42 million or something like that. As far as not domestic, the entire box office, which is what you count when you're talking about box office. Okay, the entire box office. Dan Murrell came out and gave a full or a large spiel of box office and all this, and did Superman make money, or did Man of Steel make money, and how much money? And he essentially got to where he said both of them lost a little bit of money as far as the box office is concerned. Now, after it left the box office, of course, it makes money, on Blu-ray, DVD. There are toys that are associated with these things and other products. There were 3 Lego sets, and I guarantee you the Lego sets sold very well. Um, and they may even still have some available. Uh, at least it may be a collectible even now. I don't know if they'll continue to produce things like that. But in any case, these things, because they sold, I watched them, disappear from the shelves. Toys sold back in that day. Then there was stuff from Mattel, and then of course there's the DC multiverse stuff. Right now, McFarlane Toys is doing the whole multiverse thing. And anyway, um, there's all kinds of things that come after the movie or that come along with the movie, as you can see, can add to the profitability of the film itself. And I could point to some stuff. I'm not going to do it right now. There's some statues over there of the Justice League, Batman, Wonder Woman, and Superman that come from Weta. Okay, and so Weta has several statues that they put together, and they did that on a profit basis. I guarantee you that too. They sold most of them, or enough to make it profitable before they even put it out there or made them. And I've got a few different things we can see in another video and stuff like that. Those I showed you. You can go look it up on the YouTube channel. I unboxed the Mother Box collection. There's, in fact, what it was is they sold them individually. The Mother Box came with Zack Snyder's Justice League, some different cards and some different things that were in there in a tin with some different pins for the different Justice League characters and all that. But you can look at that and see it. I unboxed it. I got all 3 of them. So I have the 3 Mother Boxes. and and they went on sale and they were gone immediately. Just they were gone. And I've seen them since on sale for around. I'm not talking about when I got it actually. It's just I've seen them, for well over $800, you know, per box. So that's out there. But um, like I said, you can check it out. So there were a number of things that I watched, and such as, again, another such as uh, the soundtrack or the score by Junkie XL, uh, Tom Hokenberg. Uh, if I mispronounced the name, I apologize. Uh, on vinyl. Now, I don't know that I would ever want to get it on vinyl except to just have it, but it was quite expensive and it sold out nearly immediately from every outlet that I could find it at. It's still, you can go and find them. They're on eBay and things like that. But they're few and far between. All right. But yeah, sold out. Things just sold out frequently. Um, and I'm talking about the Man of Steel things, and whereas the Superman side of things, I'm hearing numbers and not getting any good information. I did another video before about the 500 plus up to 1.3 million downloads or VOD, and I put an assumption on there that was the $30 variety. Okay, so let me just pull a calculator up so I can do this again real quick. Oh, I didn't want to do that. Okay, calculator. There we go. See 1300. Yeah, 1.3 million VOD downloads, and times $30 is about $40 million. But when I asked Grok, and I had this in the video, how much, I don't think I showed exactly where that Grok said it, but Grok said that Jurassic World Rebirth came out. So this number was compared. The 1.3 million was compared, and it was just a little bit above um, Mission Impossible. Either the 500 something thousand was a little bit above Mission Impossible in a similar time period, or the 1.3 million. Don't remember. Maybe both of them. Um, and then they didn't talk about much of that afterwards. And I kind of got a few numbers that really showed a slowdown from there, big time. And people have mentioned. Let me give this comparison. Why compare it to Mission Impossible though? But then when I asked Grok, Grok said that Jurassic World didn't give a number of downloads or a number of VOD things, and I was giving it the full $30 like you just saw. Well, I didn't show it to you. I don't know how to put a calculator up here, but you can do it yourself. 1.3 million times 30 is $39 million. So I did that, and I asked Grok, what did Jurassic World make? How many views? It said that there wasn't views given, but they gave a number after about a week or something like this. You can check Grok out yourself. It was either like 60 million or somewhere closer to $80 million. And I'm thinking 60 to $80 million, and you can just put a divisor on there, $24 if you wanted to, 29, whatever you might put on it. It's going to have more downloads, more purchases, and it's obviously more money. 39 million versus 60 to $80 million, whichever one it was. And even if you give it the low end, it's $20 million more, which is 50% more. Is from 50 to 100% more sales for Jurassic World Rebirth in the VOD market, and for my theater, they kept Jurassic World Rebirth in the theater and got rid of Superman, and had Fantastic Four in there for another couple of weeks after Superman left, and Jurassic World I think left about the same time Fantastic Four First Steps left as well. So I mean, that's just, this is anecdotal, but that's a comparison. They said 13 million views when it got to HBO Max. But that's not telling us what it may be compared to. What do you compare that to? And other people have compared it and given you some context to that, that it's less than other movies, such as, we believe, Man of Steel, Zack Snyder's Justice League, stuff like that. There's there's a there's a difference, okay? Uh, in those two, there's a show of lesser in that. The other shows of James Gunn's, Creature Commandos, Peacemaker season 2, are showing low viewership. They're not reaching the top 10 in the uh, in the Nielsen ratings, or Nielsen ratings rather, Nielsen. You can go to some other websites and check those things out, or other videos, and see what they're saying there. I'm going to get into this with this discussion with AI and show you some things, because people have been coming back whenever it was constantly said that Superman is doing so well against Man of Steel, and we're looking at it saying Man of Steel has more box office. And then if we adjust it for inflation, there is no comparison. Superman lost more than half of the viewership of Man of Steel. You can check the numbers out, and I mean the numbers.com, and see that fact of the sales, the ticket sales, the price of the ticket. I went through the price of these things on another video. So all of that I don't need to do. But then people came out and said, well, adjusted for inflation doesn't matter at all. There's no such thing as adjusted for inflation. You never talked about adjusted for inflation in the past. You never talked about it before. It was never spoken of before, and we're talking about just recently, in the last few months, because it keeps being pointed out. Superman's doing so much better than Man of Steel, and we keep coming back. I'm talking about we, as in people that uh, look at the reality of it and would say, well, that what you just said is not true. It's not changed. But now here's the adjusted for inflation part. I'm going to give you two sorts of that. One is just the total box office. You never talked about that before. I've been watching, things from back in the AMC days of John Campea and Collider and so forth, and other shows as well, Grace Randolph and others. And people talked back then about adjusted for inflation, things being adjusted for inflation, what they would be adjusted for inflation. This is one of the top grossing films, and you always talk about it sort of immediately in the terms of these top grossing films. The Superman 2025 James Gunn crowd came and attacked Man of Steel, and people that look at it in truth said, whoa, 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 I'm going to defend Man of Steel here. First of all, you haven't beaten the number of 670 or 668 million, whichever one you want to take. You have not beaten that number worldwide. You're saying you beat this number for the gross or domestic. So, big deal. I mean, there has been a shift to take that as proof positive of everything. Okay, that that it's making so much and it's doing so well domestically, so that it's whatever the narrative becomes at that point. I'm not really concerned about it. That is one of those things that was not talked about before in so much emphasis as it is now, because that's the only real position they have but then if we adjust for inflation, Man of Steel is higher. Uh, and it's only higher. Superman higher than the unadjusted domestic by I think about 65 million. Unadjusted, after you adjust it, there's still no comparison. And again, if you lose half of the tickets and you're saying we made as much money, um, inflation is it's a tricky thing because we take the number for inflation, we believe that. I don't have a problem agreeing to the idea of this. That we're just going to take a number that we can use a multiplier for. So we're just believing it. But if you know anything about inflation, okay, a few years ago, the multiverse toys, let alone 13 years ago, okay, but a few years ago they were $20. All right, and they've turned into. Let me pull one over here. If I'm not mistaken, this is a DC Direct one, but it's very very much close. So this is the Superboy. Direct. There's something about it. Yes, there we go. Superboy. Uh, Reign of Tomorrow. There's the comic book that I get with it. Now this is for sale. If you want it, let me know. And anyway, these typically they'll sell for $25 now in the store, if you can find them in the store. But they were $20, $25 now, $20 before. That's an easy calculation. It's 20% has been added onto it. It's 20% higher. Okay, or a 20% is tax. It added 25%. It's 20% higher than it was. Does that make sense? If I took off 20% of 25, all right, let me do this in the calculator. I like to use a calculator for these things. $25 minus, and I say 20%. This is, you get a sale for 20%. It goes to $20. All right, but at $20, and you want to add on to it 25%, it gets it up to $25. So however you figure inflation is on that, is it 20% or is it 25%? I'm not going to argue with how it's done. I'm not an economist, and I'm not a CPA or anything like that. But I can tell you the $5 difference is a difference. And back when Man of Steel came out and Batman v Superman, things like that, they were about $15. So they've increased $10 since Man of Steel time. But movie tickets, if there has been half the sales, half of the audience, then goodness, that, and it's made a little less than, but close to. Okay, 670 million, 615 to 670 million. Yeah, we could grab some numbers and do all this, but we're not going to do it right now. But that that almost means there's a double of the ticket price now. And I remember prices of tickets being between $7.50 and about $10 in most places. Depends on where you went. And then there was the real cheap theaters and stuff like that too that usually got it later on. But yeah, there's this question. Okay, how much was the ticket price back then? Now we've averaged it, and it was like $8 and some change, as opposed to about $11 or so now, or something like that. Maybe almost $12. And I just get to thinking, well, that doesn't equate if it's about half uh, of the tickets sold, because if it's about half now, the calculation goes deeper than that, and that's why there's dis- disparity there. But to get to 350 million domestically now, and the ticket prices that I'm aware of are around $17 a piece. Okay, if you go to a matinee, they're like 16, 14 or $16, something to that effect, maybe 13. That's about double what it was back in 2013. Uh, so inflation has been a lot more than what it claims. But we're looking at inflation as far as in turn. I'm talking about inflation as actually going to the movie theaters, the ability to buy things and go to the movie theaters and pay for the movie. There's been an inflated cost for that beyond what regular inflation is. But inflation dealing with money itself is what we're looking at, and that's why that matters less. That it's almost twice as much per ticket than it was, in 12 years ago. Um, like I'm saying, the ticket price matters less than the ability to use the money. So the dollar for dollar amount, or what you could buy with a dollar as compared to now. We don't have to break into it and say, okay, every little this is going to just be a national kind of average. I hope that all that makes sense to you. But inflation, there's an inflation calculator just for how much uh, $10 was in 2013 as compared to now, and that's a simplification, but it makes perfect sense because it's about the money that studios get and they have available to them. Okay, that's the simplistic part or the easy way for me to say that. So going from there though, um, and going into the questions, I went to AI and I asked a question. I was looking for an article, and I was able to find it, but we're gonna jump to this and show it to you real quick. AI answers the question: Is Man of Steel second highest grossing Superman after adjustment for inflation? Okay, and I forget exactly what all I said there. It says this. Now, pay attention to AI lovers. There's some fixes that need to happen. It says no. Man of Steel is not the second highest grossing Superman movie when adjusted for inflation. It holds the unadjusted worldwide box office total. But the 1978 Superman film surpasses it when adjusted for inflation, making Man of Steel the second highest in that adjusted category, according to Lala. No, it is not adjusted for inflation. It is the second. So it's a contradictory answer right there. AI didn't catch it. I apologize that AI didn't catch it. But anyway, I talked to Grok. Now, this is at the top of my discussion. I'm going to kind of start. Well, let me do this. Let me scroll it down. Okay. We talked. And we talked about the share of the studio with the theater, and how much tax credits and where Superman shot and where Man of Steel shot. And I was doing a comparison ultimately with all of that because of all the claims about the budget for Superman. It just occurred to me the other day that there was a question that wasn't being asked. Now, I'm still scrolling. There's repeats of the question sometimes. We kept adjusting numbers. We'd look at a number and it'd be something wrong. Grok got these studio shares. Okay, I can go and calculate all of this out and add it all up, right? Um, but he was getting these numbers wrong. Now, this is supposedly the Man of Steel one. This is Superman one. I have not double checked these. I assume that these splits were correctly established. And I added all these numbers up, and Grok, he, she, whatever it is, the AI got it wrong. I'm going to just call it he, uh, because Grok sounds kind of like a male name to me. But anyway, um, I had to argue with him several times about this studio share, and the numbers that he gave me added up to not what he gave me as a total. And I, he he would say, or it would say, Grok would say, yes, I transposed the numbers here. It was in this number, as you pointed out before, of 170 million versus 168 million. I said, no, you're only 200,000 off. I'm not talking about that million number. I'm talking about the thousands. I'm only saying that you added up these shares, and here's that bottom line number: 195,911 and 528. Okay, and that 9 is supposed to be a 7 when you just add up these numbers here, assuming that all these calculated percentages is correct, and of course it rounds it. Anyway, we argued about that, went back and forth. There is several repetitions of new numbers being provided and things like that, and corrections, and I went to put things into the Google spreadsheet, Google Sheets, and asked some questions in between here, and we discussed a bunch of different stuff. Like I said, a bunch of stuff about the budgets and all that. And it was a discussion. I'm about maybe 2/3 of the way through. And scrolling down a little faster, because we talked about Marvel, we talked about Disney, Captain America Brave New World, Thunderbolts, he brought up Quantum Mania, Grok did, um, and all kinds of things to come up with sort of eventually a spreadsheet, profit and loss ideas and questions, statements. And credit to Dan Murrell for trying to do the research. I think he overlooked some things and ignored a couple of things. All right. So first of all, we're going to say that before people started saying we weren't ever looking at adjusted for inflation, before they ever started claiming, I'm trying to get rid of these things all the time. Here's an article about the Superman movies ranked by box office adjusted for inflation. Before we ever said anything about it in response to Superman 2025, saying that it was making more money domestically. They had to have the caveat eventually. It was going to surpass Superman. And we said, but it's coming nowhere near it according to inflation numbers. This is in 2024, about a year before Superman. Okay? 2025. So, I apologize. I did not mean to click on that ad. All right, back to this. So here we go. Adjusted for inflation. And I'm just going to scroll down to it. The number 6 movie, adjusted for inflation, is Superman 4: The Quest for Peace. All right? At $83,745,945. 84 million. Okay? Adjusted for inflation. Wonderful. Lowest grossing Superman movie of the 6. What in the world? Why are you changing? It's saying I clicked on that, didn't it? Anyway, the number 5 one is Superman 3. 253,139,954. All right. Worldwide box office. Okay, and then adjusted for inflation. All right. Then we go on down to Superman Returns, adjusted for inflation. 609 million. Keep this in mind. 609,463,955. All right. And the day 391 million and some change. All right, 609,463,000. Now, in between here, and it would move these other ones down from uh, 4, down a little bit. The number 3 is 825 million. Superman 2 in 1980. 825 million and change. Okay, so now between Superman 2, the number 3, and then the old number 4, because it was a year before Superman came out, Superman now stands with 615 million worldwide box office. Okay? All right, we'll give it its place at number 4. Then number 2, because number 3. Number 2 is Man of Steel, 670 million. All right. Adjusted for inflation, 903,784,000, and so forth. Almost 904 million. That's the adjusted for inflation number for Man of Steel. Okay? Remember that Superman Returns, 609 million adjusted for inflation. Superman 1978, 1.4, right? Billion. 1,447,895,961 adjusted for inflation. Okay? From 78, 300 million in that at that time. Adjusted for inflation is 1.44 or almost 1.45 billion dollars. Okay? That is the list. This was an article before the argument came up that they were trying to say something. They weren't looking at adjusted for inflation numbers. They're just trying to proclaim that the new Superman movie was just about to blow out of the water Man of Steel, and it does it by proxy somehow. It doesn't make a lot of sense. I'm telling you, this is an argument that they're making, because when you go to this thing, DC Studio Central, Superman passes up rather, Man of Steel, adjusts the sales for inflation and also adjusts the budget for inflation. It still made the same amount. It's still less compared to Superman. And adjust Superman Returns for inflation, and it would be $1 billion movie, still outgrossing Man of Steel. Okay, Jason Monk, DC Studios Central. No, 609 million is not $1 billion movie. Okay? Now, that brought me to ask the question, and I went ahead and did it a different way over here. I looked at, this was a year ago, right? That the Man of Steel one came out. So I wanted to make sure that $1 billion was a ridiculous number. 390 million in 2006 is worth 626,739,000 today. So even if I added another million, gave it 2 million more, it would not go up to $1 billion. Okay, it is 20 something million more. Sure, maybe, but so forth and so on. So here is the calculation article about those kind of things and where it is. But that's just, we're gonna let you look into all those things if you want to. There's the website, in2013dollars.com. Okay. CPI inflation calculator. You can look all this stuff up and do that yourself. If you have any evidence contrary to what I'm saying, all I did was put it in there and let it do. Okay. And I could change this number right now, 2 million more, and you'd see the same, a little bit higher number there. But it's not gonna make that big of a difference. I'm gonna get rid of that. Just try to save some space on the computer. I'm even gonna get rid of this one, because as shocked as I was, highest opening ever for a solo Superman film. By the way, it opened 125 million for the weekend. To include the previews, Man of Steel, unadjusted for inflation, was 128 million, higher than Superman 2025. Okay, and I was there both times. The theater I went to for Man of Steel said it sold out and was sold out. There was people everywhere. I went to the Superman 2025 showings, and show after show after show, as I looked at it, where it was saying it's nearly sold out or three quarters sold out or whatever it was, I looked around, and the seats that were saying they were sold were not occupied through the entire movie. Either people bought tickets and didn't show up, or people didn't buy the tickets. Somebody bought the tickets, something bought the tickets, or something showed they were sold. Now I'll tell you that happened just last night. I went to see a Monday night mystery movie. It was sold out. I mean, the theater, other than a few rows in the front and two or four spotted seats throughout the rest of the theater, everything was sold out. Everything was sold. And I looked down there, there wasn't a fourth of the people there watching that movie. They may have got wind of what it was and said, this is a boring artsy film and I don't want to watch it. Was thinking that it was something else, and I was hoping it was a different movie too. I was really pressing for Black Phone 2, actually. That was what I was hoping it was going to be. And I think people would have been there for that. But no, this is some slow paced and ridiculous true story adapted movie that it just wasn't appealing. It did not work, you know. So that's the way it is. But it said it was sold out. And I'm going to ask the manager when I walk in there next time and say, I got questions for you. Because they said it was sold out. I had to buy a ticket way up at the top. And there was plenty of tickets down below that were available. Plenty of seats that were available. Anyway, going on from there. What is this? Actually, it fell short of Man of Steel. Yep, that's true. That's true. Made on 3-day screenings. Man of Steel still made 4. Get your facts right. They say winning. Still didn't. Even if it was true, wouldn't make him the best Superman. And this is just discussion from Facebook. I'm gonna go ahead and be done with it. All right, and close that out. And I like this just comparison. This is nice. So if you check it out, you want to Screen Rant and talk about that year. There was a comparison, and I found the article. It's somewhere in the Hollywood Reporter. Now I found a blip about the article rather than the article itself because I'm not subscribed to the Hollywood Reporter, and apparently it's in the archives, so I can't see it. If you have a subscription to Hollywood Reporter, back in 2013, they did write up a uh, a total amount and said, but adjusted for inflation, Superman is still much higher grossing than Man of Steel was, and we all agree with that. Anybody looking at the facts agrees that the '78 Superman is a higher grossing film. Okay, so, and if they had looked at it then, I don't know. I don't think so. Just the way that inflation works, I'm not sure if the sequel, Superman 2, would have been number 2 and Man of Steel would have been less, but now it's outpaced that total adjusted for inflation, so that it's now number 2 compared to Superman 2 back in 2013. Somebody could do the research on that and see how that is. The same calculator I just used will adjust that number back, say 1980, and whatever number that the 1980 was, adjusted for inflation at 825 million. What was it, back in 2013? You can figure that out. I'm gonna let y'all do that. And I'm going to go ahead and close this and close this one as well. And we're going to talk for just a minute about some of this stuff that we got into. And what we got into at first, or at the end rather, was the ancillaries, the toys, the DVDs, and stuff like that. But we started out with, and I did throw in there this. What about this information about Batman v Superman? How much did it make? What if, adjust that for inflation? Just to throw numbers together. But the different numbers I was trying to get to had to do with budget. And what I asked Grok several times was, what is the deal about budgets? Why are studios claiming these low budgets? You remember they Quantum Mania. Let's see if I can ask this question. Grok is messing with me. Give me a second for this to reset. Hopefully. It may have so much on there that, it doesn't want to look at it. I may have to just go over to my spreadsheet and take a good look at that. Let's see if I can go to x.com. I'll close out Grok there and look at X a different way, just really briefly. See if I can get this on here. I appreciate you putting up with me. Here's Grok. What was the reported budget for Ant-Man Quantumania? Quantum. I think I said that right. Oh, I should have put a question mark on there, but I know he knows I'm asking the question. Alright, so here's the question. The film in question is Ant-Man, the third installment of the Ant-Man franchise, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Reported production budget, $200 million. About $200 million. Widely cited in press releases, etc., etc. Full expenses reported via the film's production entity, PIMS Productions 3, to claim UK rebates. This includes $193.2 million on pre-production, principal photography, $131.9 million on post-production. Makes Quantumania the most expensive non-Avengers MCU film, $388.4 million. UK tax rebate, $58.3 million. Subtract $58 million from $388 million. 58 from 388. That's $330 million, right? Net production budget, $330.1 million. Okay. Gross cost minus rebate. That is not $200 million. There's $130 million difference between what they say there and what they reported when they were going through it. Why the discrepancy? Okay. The VFX escalation drove it so much higher. The film grossed $476 million worldwide. They receive typically half of that. Ticket sales, about 238 million, leaving the theatrical gap of 93 million against the net budget. The net budget, okay, 92 million. Sorry. However, ancillary revenue, okay, merchandise, home video, streaming, Disney, reportedly pushed it to a razor thin net profit, about 88,000 overall. Now, somehow they reported all that, but they claimed and claimed and claimed. And Captain America: Brave New World claimed 180 million. They claimed 200 million, 180 million dollars. Why are they claiming this? Well, Grok said it's been the essentially it's been the way of the studios to claim a post incentive amount for their budget now. So we looked at Black Panther, which got a reduction of some $50 million or something like that in credit. But if you look at the numbers, the budget for it is 250 million. We said 250, 280 million, something like that. Let's see here. Give me just a second. About budget for Black Panther Wakanda Forever. Question mark. Come on, Don. All right, sequel to the original Black Panther. Get this back here. All right. No major discrepancies from UK thing. 250 million. Actual gross production, UK rebate. It says it's not publicly disclosed, but it's somewhere in this area. So the net production is 230 million, 240 million maybe. And if you make him Grok think harder, he's going to go into more details and give you a better number than this. But anyway, the reported production budget in 2020, which is Wakanda Forever, 2022, is that right? Yep, 2022, right? 2022 action sci-fi film, 2 hours 41 minutes. None of this is telling me anything different than what I need to know. But in 2022, and that was after the pandemic, okay? In the last 3 years, they've decided to start telling us things that Grok has argued very convincingly with all these proofs that they are giving us a post incentive budget now as they report movies. 180 million, 200 million. They're saying this is post production. Or it may also exclude a couple other things that they can't include in incentives, and there were things that didn't make a lot of sense in the argument. Grok could be wrong about it. He could be arguing from the wrong perspective or point of view. This is not complete, so I'm just pointing this out. There's 14 weeks for Man of Steel, and these were the numbers broken down by the week according to the Numbers website. And if you compare it to the Box Office Mojo, they're the same. There's some discrepancy of a couple $1,000,000 in the worldwide box office from Box Office Mojo to this. Not going to make a difference really in what we're trying to say here. But Grok says that you break down the split that they get, that the studio gets in the first week, the second week, third week, and these numbers, just look at them as 75, 65, 55, 45, 40, down through there. 35 for a few weeks. Actually, the rest of the time. It might drop lower than that some other time. But this was the split that Grok says is out there. Now, other people will say it's 50-50. I don't know because I'm not the one that said this. Grok said it without um, without my particular input. Just asking what is the share of the studio versus this. So if Grok is wrong, then Grok is wrong. All right. So I did this also for Man of Steel. I'm sorry, Superman, 2025. It's got 12 weeks. It left the theater earlier. And the number in the share and all that, and this is the total versus the share. And I have no problem with that, or any of these numbers. It goes into international. It says the international week one is 40%. Um, uh, Sorry, the proportion was 40%. And this 45% is the split, and we figured out. Well, we didn't actually, because it goes into a lot of complicated questions. As to the first week, it was only available in 20 markets or something like that, and then it became available in 50, I think, the second week. So that means 30 markets are the first week of their share. And I didn't get into all those things. I could dive into all of that. But what I ultimately was looking at was the production budgets. Both Superman and Man of Steel are reportedly $225 million production budgets. Okay? The marketing budget has been touted as anywhere from 100 million to 200 million for the new Superman movie. I said 150 million because that was the one that most people were going with for a while. They were saying this is the number. This is fine. Man of Steel, I accept 125 million. I don't believe it was 150 million. That was being said by one place, and then other people were quoting that exact place. And at the same time, there were news stories about the production tie-ins and that discount that is to the company of that amount of 150 to 170 million dollars, and it depended upon when you were reading the different articles. So it became pretty apparent that the one source, which I believe was Variety, did not have a number actually being given to them, because the only other numbers being produced out there were these statements of production tie-ins and things like that. Production tie-ins, and one of the things that they pointed out was the toys like um, um, the Legos. Okay, for instance, and then there was, of course, Gillette and product placements in the movie and stuff like that. It was mentioned in a bunch of different things of that nature. And you'll forgive me maybe if I don't remember, and I legitimately do not remember many product placements in Superman 2025. There were things like Big Belly Burger. There were comic book references, but I don't remember other things like Coca-Cola being in there, Gillette, and stuff like that. I don't remember the product placements, and I haven't seen a video on them to show a bunch of different product placements. I do know Man of Steel had a number of different things. Hardee's was one thing. Hardee's was much bigger then and got a big boost at that moment. And at least in my area, has definitely dropped off and gone downhill, um, to their shame and disgrace. But Superman 2025 partnered with Dairy Queen, and Dairy Queen has not had great reputation for a very long time, uh, and it still doesn't now. And it's. But anyway, they mixed in the blizzard with it. But anyway, so I'm looking at this. I'm looking at these particular numbers, and according to kind of an easy way of looking at this, okay, or a first step looking at it. This goes to Forbes' uh, evidential thing that nobody has refuted yet. Losing $42 million plus for the studio, almost 43 million. And in the same kind of analysis and just giving it a marketing budget of 125,000 because it said that that's what the marketing budgets were at that time, which I'm going to go into reasons why they weren't necessarily that much. For instance, like Twilight and Pirates of the Caribbean or something like that. Not Pirates of the Caribbean, but there's a couple other movies that. Oh yeah. Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows spent as much on marketing as they had their entire budget or more. And so there was this inflated marketing budget theory at that point that was coming along saying these blockbusters are spending, massive amounts on their marketing, and they really should not be doing that. But anyway, assuming that that's it, then $8 million loss in the box office, right? And so this is where some people could come in and say it lost money. And Dan Murrell would put this up higher, another 25 million, but that's still less than this loss. Now, going from that and going back to the idea from the Facebook post that we just saw, it said you have to adjust for inflation, the budget, and the marketing budget. Well, here's the thing about that. If you do that, you adjust for inflation, right? And you do the multiplying, it moves it up the same amount as it, was. So it doesn't matter. So let's do CPI. I'm gonna call it 9 million. Okay. There we go. In 2013 dollars, no, not 900 million. Where'd you come up with that? 9. All right. So $9 million in 2013 is worth today $12,500,000. So going back, an $8 million so-called loss adjusts to $12,500,000. That's less than the loss of Superman. Factual, okay? That's the facts. Just taking it to now. If we give it another 25 million, so we change this to that's 34 million, right? 0. We're probably going to surpass the 40. So we got 47 million. Okay? That's if we give it that. Okay? And we say that